The hills are alive with the sound of music. The Sound of Music wasn't just a wholesome family musical. It was a battlefield of weather disasters, actor injuries, studio clashes, and cultural aftershocks. Behind those sweeping alpine landscapes and angelic songs was chaos, a near-drowning child actor, a furious Christopher Plummer, and dangerous stunts nobody expected Julie Andrews to survive. Today we reveal 15 weird facts about The Sound of Music that shatter its sugary image. And wait until you hear the mysterious bonus fact. It might just change how you see this classic forever. Stay tuned, because what you think you know about this beloved film is only the overture. Julie Andrews nearly drowns. During the rowboat scene, the iconic moment where Maria and the children topple into the lake looks playful on screen. Off camera, it was dangerous. The youngest actress, Kim Carath, playing Gretel, couldn't swim. Julie Andrews was meant to grab her immediately, but the boat flipped harder than expected, sending Carath under. Andrews lunged to help, but surfaced gasping herself. Crew members panicked as cameras rolled, and another child actor had to pull Carath up. What audiences see as charming slapstick was, in reality, a brush with disaster. Later, Carath admitted she developed a lifelong fear of water because of that day. It wasn't just a mishap, it was a near tragedy disguised as comedy. Watching the scene now, the smiles hide real terror, a reminder that old Hollywood often risked safety for the shot. Christopher Plummer despised the movie. Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, delivered one of his most memorable performances. Yet he loathed it. He famously called it The Sound of Mucus. Plummer hated the saccharine tone, resented the constant singing, and felt the script softened the historical Von Trapp story. During filming, he often drank heavily between takes to cope with boredom, particularly during the endless Salzburg sequences. He later admitted he stayed only because he admired Julie Andrews' professionalism and charm. Not fond nostalgia, pure disdain. For decades, Plummer avoided cast reunions and interviews about the film. Only later in life did he acknowledge the global affection for it. But even then, he never softened his original verdict. That bitterness adds a hidden sharpness to his stern performance. His disapproval wasn't acting, it was real. Julie Andrews' helicopter scene was a nightmare. The opening shot of Andrews twirling in the meadow is now cinema legend. But what audiences don't see is the chaos of the helicopter filming it. Every time the camera swooped close, the force of the rotor wash nearly flattened her. Andrews later recalled being knocked to the ground repeatedly. Every time they came around, I'd be thrown into the grass like a rag doll. It wasn't musical bliss, it was survival. The opening sequence required multiple takes, leaving Andrews bruised and exhausted. Yet her radiant smile remains intact on screen, proving how much grit went into capturing one of cinema's most joyous moments. That shot wasn't just art. It was endurance under roaring blades. Nazi banners terrified Salzburg residents. When the crew decorated Salzburg with Nazi flags for filming, it wasn't an innocent set dressing. Locals who had lived through the Anschluss in 1938 found the sight horrifying. Many burst into tears. For them, the banners weren't props. They were living nightmares resurrected. Austrian officials initially banned filming of those scenes until the studio negotiated special permission. The tension was real. During one take, a group of elderly passers-by shouted angrily, demanding the banners be torn down immediately. For Salzburg, the trauma was still raw, and The Sound of Music reopened wounds. What audiences saw as historical authenticity came at the cost of real emotional upheaval for the community, not nostalgia. Re-traumatization. Julie Andrews fought to keep Maria human. Maria von Trapp is remembered as practically angelic, but Andrews fought hard to avoid playing her too sweet. The studio wanted saccharine perfection, but Andrews argued for grit. She injected playful sarcasm and subtle mischief into her performance, often ad-libbing small gestures, like playful eyebrow lifts or quick retorts, that grounded Maria as human. In reality, the real Maria von Trapp had a stricter, harsher personality. Andrews created a warmer figure, but she resisted being turned into a cardboard saint. She once said, "If she's too perfect, no one will believe her." It wasn't just a role, it was a battle for authenticity. Andrews's choices are why Maria feels alive, rebellious, and relatable even today. Without her instincts, the character might have been as stiff as the studio's original vision. The real Von Trapp family was unimpressed. Audiences fell in love with the Von Trapps on screen, but the real Von Trapp family didn't see their lives reflected accurately. They disliked the way Captain Von Trapp was portrayed as cold and authoritarian. The real Georg von Trapp, they insisted, was warm, gentle, and deeply devoted to music long before Maria entered the household. Even Maria herself once said, "It's not my story, it's Hollywood's." The family also rejected the escape over the mountains ending. In truth, they boarded a train to Italy and left legally before crossing into the United States. For the Von Trapps, the film distorted their history into melodrama, yet ironically, it also preserved their legacy worldwide, not celebration, frustration. What audiences embraced as gospel truth was, for the Von Trapps, a half-fabricated fairy tale. Their discontent reveals how Hollywood reshapes reality to fit narrative beats, and how those revisions can outlive the truth itself. The Do-Re-Mi montage took weeks to shoot. The cheerful montage of Maria and the children dancing through Salzburg looks effortless, but it required enormous logistical planning. Each segment, whether skipping through the Mirabelle Gardens, running along bridges, or twirling in front of fountains, was shot at different times of day. Lighting shifts, costume resets, and the challenge of keeping the children coordinated stretched the sequence into weeks of filming. Julie Andrews later joked, "By the end, the children could sing Do-Re-Mi in their sleep." What appears seamless is actually a patchwork of dozens of takes, edited with precision to create the illusion of one joyous afternoon. Not spontaneity, precision. The montage captures childlike energy, but it was engineered through repetition and discipline. Ironically, the carefree feeling of the sequence came from some of the most exhausting work of the entire shoot. Eleanor Parker felt overshadowed. Eleanor Parker, cast as the Baroness, brought elegance and sly humor to her role. But behind the scenes, she reportedly felt overshadowed by Andrews's spotlight. Parker was an acclaimed actress with Oscar nominations, yet in The Sound of Music, she was positioned as a narrative obstacle. Audiences booed her character despite her nuanced performance. Parker once remarked that she enjoyed working with the cast, but insiders recalled her expressing frustration at being reduced to the woman who loses to Maria. On set, she remained professional, but years later, she admitted she felt critics overlooked her. Not villainy, sacrifice. Parker's portrayal of quiet heartbreak gives the film depth, but her own Hollywood reputation never recovered its shine. She gave the Baroness humanity, and Hollywood gave her obscurity. The gazebo almost collapsed during filming. The romantic 16 going on 17 sequence was filmed inside a glass gazebo built specifically for the production, but the set was fragile. During rehearsals, Liesl, Charmian Carr slipped on a wet floor, crashing through a pane of glass and injuring her leg. The accident left her limping, but she continued shooting with her leg bandaged and hidden from the camera. The gazebo itself wasn't stable. Lighting rigs overheated the space, causing glass panes to crack under pressure. Cast and crew often joked they were risking their necks for one of the film's most tender scenes. Not stability, fragility. Every smile, every dance step in that sequence hides the tension of knowing the set could betray them at any moment. What feels like youthful romance was achieved through quiet endurance and real pain. Julie Andrews had to reinvent herself after Mary Poppins. When Andrews signed on, the studio worried audiences would see her as Mary Poppins in Austrian costume. She had just won an Oscar, and comparisons loomed large. Andrews had to consciously strip away the magical prim quality she'd embodied the year before. She played Maria with warmth and earthiness, leaning into imperfection rather than polish. Andrews herself said, "Mary was in control. Maria was not." She allowed Maria to stumble, laugh, and disobey, distinguishing the roles sharply. Not repetition, reinvention. Andrews's ability to escape typecasting ensured her career thrived beyond Disney's shadow. For audiences, Maria felt fresh and human because Andrews fought not to let her second iconic role become a clone of her first. Salzburg Cathedral refused permission at first. One of the film's most iconic moments is Maria's wedding inside the Grand Salzburg Cathedral, but originally the church refused permission to film inside. Church officials felt the production trivialized sacred space by turning it into a Hollywood backdrop. The crew had to negotiate tirelessly, promising respectful handling of the setting and limiting equipment to reduce disruption. Even with approval, the production faced tension. Locals were unhappy about floodlights and large cranes invading a place of worship. Julie Andrews recalled the eerie stillness of the cathedral during takes. It was breathtaking, but we always felt like intruders. Not blessing, reluctance. The grandeur of that wedding scene hides the political and spiritual wrangling that nearly killed it. Without compromise, Maria's grand cinematic walk down the aisle might never have existed at all. The Nazis weren't fiction for some extras. During the chilling night escape sequence, extras dressed as Nazi soldiers patrolled the streets and train station. What audiences didn't realize is that several of those extras were actual Austrians who had lived under Nazi rule. Some had even been conscripted into Hitler's forces. For them, donning the uniforms wasn't pretend. It was reliving trauma. Reports suggest a few extras quietly broke down between takes, unable to face the past resurrected in costume. Director Robert Wise pushed through, knowing authenticity mattered. Not just acting, haunting repetition. The eerie realism of those soldiers in the film owes itself to the painful memories of the men who wore the uniforms, not for Hollywood, but once for history. Hollywood almost cut Edelweiss. Today, Edelweiss is one of the most beloved songs from The Sound of Music, often mistaken for an Austrian folk tune. But during production, studio executives debated cutting it entirely, claiming it slowed pacing. Composer Richard Rodgers fought back, arguing it grounded Captain von Trapp's character emotionally and tied Austria's identity into the narrative. Christopher Plummer later admitted he lip-synced, since his own singing voice didn't suit the role. The song's emotional punch, however, became one of the film's anchors. Ironically, Austrians were baffled that the world thought it was their national song, not background music, identity. Edelweiss became so iconic that it seeped into real Austrian culture, proving how cinema can overwrite history with melody. Charmian Carr was injured during filming. Charmian Carr, who played Liesel, endured multiple injuries during the shoot. After shattering glass in the gazebo, she developed a severe ankle sprain, but the pressure of production schedules forced her to keep filming. The crew concealed her limp with clever blocking and camera tricks. Carr later admitted she felt both pride and pain. At just 21 years old, she was shouldering injuries that might have halted veteran actors. She joked, "I was Liesel going on crutches." Not youthfulness, sacrifice. Liesel's carefree dance masks the pain of an actress refusing to let injury overshadow her moment. Her professionalism turned what could have been a disaster into a performance cherished for generations. The film's box office saved 20th Century Fox. By the mid-1960s, 20th Century Fox was bleeding money after colossal flops like Cleopatra. The studio needed a miracle. The Sound of Music delivered. It shattered box office records, grossing over $280 million worldwide in its original run, an astronomical figure at the time. Executives admitted the film kept the lights on at Fox. Without it, the studio might have collapsed entirely. Critics initially dismissed the movie as too sentimental, but audiences made it a cultural juggernaut. Not failure. Salvation. Behind the joyful songs and children's laughter was the fate of an entire studio hanging in the balance. The Sound of Music didn't just entertain, it resurrected a sinking empire. Julie Andrews and the real Maria von Trapp had tension. In a surprising twist, the real Maria von Trapp actually visited the set, and she wasn't pleased. She reportedly scolded Julie Andrews for not being strict enough in her portrayal. Andrews, who had fought to soften Maria's edges, bristled at the critique. Their brief encounter was chilly, with Andrews later admitting she was quite formidable. Not warm reunion, awkward clash. The woman whose life inspired the story found herself alienated from her cinematic double. The meeting never made headlines, but it revealed the deepest irony. Maria von Trapp couldn't recognize herself in the role that made her immortal. The Sound of Music was never just a musical. It was danger, disdain, discipline, and salvation all hidden beneath alpine sunshine. What audiences embraced as a fairy tale was, in truth, a film made with bruises, battles, and broken glass. And yet, through those struggles, it became one of the most enduring movies in history. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets, like, subscribe, and share your favorite hidden detail. Because just like the echo in the Austrian hills, these stories deserve to keep singing.